Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spirit Speaker KC podcast. I am psychic medium Jamie Collins. Thank you for tuning in. And as I always mention, please go to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. I'm also on Spotify. If you're not one who wants to watch and you just want to listen, I am on Spotify. I thought today that I would talk a little bit about one of the things that I get from a lot of developing mediums, or heck, for that matter, even myself, people who have been practicing their mediumship for a while. What do I do when I sense or feel two communicators? How do I know that I have two communicators? And what do I do? So I think one of the interesting things is how do we sense that we have multiple communicators? So remember, one of the ways, first of all, that we sense spirit, and I think we've talked about this in an episode or a couple episodes, that everybody senses spirit differently. But I'm really a big believer that most of the time that we sense spirit in our auric field, that area around us. You may have heard of the aura, A-U-R-A, the aura, and where the auric field is where I believe we begin to sense spirit. And what does that mean when we sense it? I believe there is a change in the atmosphere, and there is change with you. So some people may get warm, some people may get goosebumps, some people may hear a buzzing or a tingling. But I believe that everyone senses spirit differently, but there should be some type of change. Now, on the flip side of that, sometimes spirit can be very subtle. Some people may not get a sense in their auric field or a change in the atmosphere, and they may get a picture in their mind. They may sense a gentleman and get a picture in their mind. They may be very clairvoyant. And so some people may get that. And that's fine. Again, remember, I don't believe there's any right or wrong in the way that you receive spirit. But I have found that majority of people will sense spirit around them. And so that's how it feels for me. I ask spirit to come forward and to enter my auric field. And so I will kind of sense them, feel them. It's kind of almost in a way, I've always said, I think most of us have experienced when someone is staring at us, looking at us, and even though you're not looking at them, look at you, you sense it. You just know that someone is staring at you, someone is looking at you. You just sense it. Well, it's kind of the same thing when you're working with spirit. You just learn to sense them. And that takes practice. I don't know how many times I've had developing mediums or newbies, beginners in my development circle, and they'll be like, Jamie, I don't know how to sense spirit. We'll be talking about linking. And remember, we said linking is when spirit's knocking at the door, or it's like a phone call. You sense them. And I will get some newbies who say, I can't sense spirit. And I'm like, you will. It takes practice. You will learn how to sense spirit. And then we talked about a couple of weeks ago or a couple episodes ago, sitting in the power. That will teach you how to sense the difference between your power, energy, and of spirit. So how do we know? We're starting out and we sense spirit. So maybe you've sat down, you're ready to begin your reading, you're ready to begin your practice session, and you're sensing two spirits. Well, one of the ways that you can do that is very simply. So, for example, let's say you have a mom and a dad that are here for the sitter, which is their daughter. So what you can do is say, okay, mom, I'm going to work with you first. And then dad, I'll come to you next. Okay. So you can do it that way. A more experienced medium may go back and forth, may be able, they're so sensitive that they may be able to go back and forth. They can give a message or evidence from mom, and then they'll receive some information from dad. And as the medium, you're saying, I'm aware that dad is saying this, or dad is telling me this, or this is coming from dad. And you can go back and forth. So it really depends upon the experience of the medium. I myself, I like to go one at a time. If I'm sensing two communicators, in this case, a mom and a dad, I will go one and then to the other. That's me. Another way that you may discover that you have two communicators is when you're giving evidence, you're in the reading, you're giving evidence, and you're getting no's. So would you understand this? And the sitter says no. And you would also understand this. No. Your no's, the no's that you're receiving from your sitter about the spirit that you've been communicating with may be an indication that there is another communicator coming through. So sometimes it takes listening to our no's that we're getting. If you're giving a contact or giving a reading and you've been getting yeses and you've been getting yeses and an occasional no, but you're doing the reading and you're getting yeses, and then all of a sudden you're getting 3, 4 no's and it's not making sense. This can be an indicator that you're switching up or that there is another communicator who is coming in. So besides you have one way is you automatically sense it. You just know. The second way is by what you're receiving from the sitter. You're getting no's with a communicator, whereas you were getting yeses. And so then you have to kind of shift your awareness to tune in to the other communicator. So that information that you gave, that was the no. So let's say you're working with mom and you've gotten all these yeses from mom, and then you start getting no's. And what you would say to your sitter is, okay, I'm sensing or becoming aware of another communicator. And I sense or I feel that this communicator is a man. Is dad in spirit? Yes. What the information I just gave, review that with the sitter. So when you were getting those no's with mom, you could say, would this make sense with your dad that he liked to keep busy? He had 3 jobs. Whereas with mom with 3 jobs, you got to know. But you say, would this make sense with dad that dad had 3 jobs? Yes. Do you remember that one of those 3 jobs with dad required him to work overnight? Yes. So those, and now as you're giving that, you're kind of picking up speed. You're starting to get it. This is when you gently, very gently, you leave mom. You're not leaving her. Mom is still here. But now maybe mom is just stepping back a little bit and allowing dad to come through. And so even in my mind, I might go, okay, dad, I'm going to work with you for a moment. Mom, stay here. I'm not leaving you. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just going to go over to dad. And then I will give my sitter whatever it is that dad wants to come through with. So that's kind of how one of the ways, or a couple of the ways, that you learn how to differentiate if you have multiple communicators. Because sometimes you'll start a reading and automatically, I mean, right away, you will feel multiple communicators. And then other times, you may start a session with one communicator, but then maybe, let's say, halfway through the reading, another communicator comes. Because I'm convinced that whenever I'm having a session, there's never just one spirit there. Now, some people may disagree with that, but I'm convinced that whenever I have a session, there's going to be more than one communicator there. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm aware of all the communicators that are there. I may only resonate or sense 2 communicators when maybe there are 5, 6, or 7 that are there. So, and there have been times when I've sat down at a session, I was like, whoa, the room is full here. There's like, I can just sense the energy of 8 or 9 people. And I'll never forget a session I had years ago. This has probably been 4 or 5 years ago. And when I opened up to begin the reading, I felt like I had 20 or 25 people in the room. No exaggeration. It was like a family reunion. Well, I didn't pick up on this. I very well will admit this. And I thought it was interesting at the end of the reading, when I'm having feedback, the person told me that they worked in a funeral home. I can't remember if they were a funeral director. I don't believe they were a funeral director, but I'll never forget. They go, oh, I work in a funeral home. And I was like, oh my God, no wonder. Now, true, he may not have known all those people, and I just sensed all of those that have crossed with him. But it was amazing how I just felt all of those people. And I've gotten that, believe it or not, I've gotten that also with nurses, people who work in healthcare, who have been in contact with lots of patients. Maybe they were taking care of the patients, and then I'll sit down with a reading with a nurse who worked in a hospital, and maybe they've been a nurse for 20 years. And when I sit down with a reading, there's a room full of people. So that's why I said it depends on your sensitivity. But I really believe anytime I'm giving a reading, there's more than one person. There's more than one. Even folks who haven't lost a lot of people, you can kind of feel that. There's sometimes I've sat down with people, and maybe they're young, or maybe they're just very blessed that in their lifetime they haven't lost a lot of people that they knew or had a relationship with. And so it's kind of the same way. I've had the experience where there's a room full of people, and I've had the experience where, wow, no one's here. I'm not sensing anyone. So it's really one of those things that I believe takes practice. One, in sensing the spirit, sensing how many there are. Okay? So that's the first thing. Whether you're a beginner or you've been at it for 3, 4, 5 years, sensing multiple communicators can be tough. But let's say that you're at that stage in your development and you can sense multiple communicators. How do I work with them? How do I know that I do have multiple communicators? And as I've said, the ways that I've always been taught, it's going to take a lot of practice. But if I sense them right away, more than one communicator, and I just simply, in my mind, I set the intention with spirit. Hey, I'm going to work with you first, then I'm going to work with you next. And if it happens to be a time I can sense them both, I will say, okay, I'll go back and forth between the two. You just have to make sure you're very aware with your sitter that you explain that to them. Hey, this is coming from mom, this is coming from dad, or this is coming from grandma, and this is coming from your brother. So when you do have two communicators, you do have to pay special attention and make sure if you're going to be one of those that you give messages from each of them back and forth, make sure you're clarifying that with the sitter so they know who it's coming from. I know mom and dad would come through and they'd have some similarities, but I know, of course, your relationship is going to be different with mom than it was from dad. So there are going to be some different things that come through. So make sure you're clarifying to the sitter who that is. Okay? That's really important. And then the other part is just work with one, work with the other. But that's really the best way. And I find that when you're beginning your development, I've had many a student say that, oh my gosh, I feel spirit all the way. I just feel like there's a room full of people. Well, it's like I've talked about before. Spirit's always around, right? I mean, if you're a believer in that, if you believe the spirit world and the physical world somewhat occupy the same space, just at different frequencies, it's kind of like oxygen, it's always around, so if spirit is always around, it doesn't mean I have to be paying attention to all of them or paying attention to spirit all of the time. So I get that from a lot of beginning mediums that are beginning their development, that they're sensing multiple communicators. And there's nothing wrong with that. I believe you just have to learn how to work with them. Okay? I hope that helps. If you sense them right away, go to one and then the other. If you're quite advanced or for whatever particular reason, you feel pretty comfortable going back and forth between the two, fantastic. Just make sure you make that clear with your sitter. But really tuning into multiple communicators can be challenging. And then lastly, just to reiterate, listen to your sitter. If you've been getting yeses and then all of a sudden you're getting nos, continue with your awareness, sensitivity, and remember those no's may be an indication that we've got another communicator coming into the picture. And you, again, sense your awareness, tune into who that other communicator may be. And you'll probably find out that those no's that we were getting with one communicator, with the sitter from the communicator, is actually those no's are yeses. They just belong to another communicator. So that's why we always talk about, I'm really big with mediums and even myself when I'm doing, pay attention to no's. Really pay attention to your sitter. If you're getting yeses and then you're getting nos, that's your asterisk, your bullet point. Something has changed. Okay? That's what I'm a believer at. Either I've misunderstood something or something has changed with those no's. So I think if you'll keep that in mind, no's aren't a bad thing. Sometimes mediums get freaked out when they get no's or they get a bunch of no's. And what I try to teach them is don't get distracted by the no's. Just know that something has changed. That's it. Something has changed. A misunderstanding, or there's another communicator coming in. I hope that has helped working with multiple communicators. It can be really challenging. I don't care if you're a beginner or myself. As we've always talked about, you're always learning, you're always developing. And so I've always said that I'm constantly learning myself as I go through this. And one of the most challenging things in mediumship is multiple communicators. So I hope that helps. I appreciate you tuning in. Again, don't forget to go to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. And again, if there's ever any topics that you'd like me to talk about, let me know. Again, I've talked about last week. Here in the next month or so, hopefully sometime in October, I'd like to have a live. I think that'll be pretty cool. Maybe do a live and do some live readings or questions and readings, and kind of see how that goes. Hopefully we'll get that going in the month of October. But thanks so much. Happy first day of fall, and I'll see you next time.